Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. I am pumped up today because we're talking everybody's favorite topic, or one of everybody's favorite topics, or I don't know. We're talking dating and relationships. And this one's super fun because not only is it a grab bag episode on everybody's favorite topic, but it is also a consultation episode. So I have the lovely Dr. Sabrina Romanoff on the pod today. She is going to be consulting with me, helping answering the most burning dating questions, from like, what do I do if I can't trust people, to my partner's super logical and I'm emotional and I feel too much, to I'm dating someone that I think is boring, but I don't know if that's a bad thing, or if maybe I'm looking for the wrong thing by wanting it to be butterflies and exciting. We have so many good questions, and I'm super pumped for Dr. Sabrina Romanoff because she is a Harvard trained clinical psychologist, guys. So she's pretty smart. And she's also a professor and a researcher and a writer, and she specializes in relationships and dating. So, like, literally couldn't get better. You know, I've got my own experience, my own thoughts, my own even clinical understanding of dating and relationships. But Sabrina just takes it to that next level. So I think it's going to be extremely helpful, whether you're in a relationship or you're in the dating pool. We also talk about why dating apps suck so much. So you don't want to miss that. And yeah, that's all I've got. Let's jump right in. Hey, well, so nice to see you, Sabrina.
Hi, Hayden. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on. I'm so glad we got connected, and I'm really excited, and I know you are too, since we were talking a little bit before recording about just getting into all these relationship, dating questions. It feels like they're always relevant and relevant to so many people.
Always. Yeah. Problems in relationships, they are so essential or relevant, regardless of where you are on the dating spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I tried to, grab a good selection for today's episode. And there's some for more people like in the dating world. And then we touch some on being in a partnership. And so I think there's a good range. But yeah, let's just jump into the first question. So it says, Dear Evergreen, I have a hard time trusting people when I like them. Even if they haven't done anything wrong, I catch myself assuming they're going to lose interest or disappear. Where does that come from, and how do I work through it? This is an interesting one.
I love this question. The first thing that jumps out at me is that I think trust issues, they stem from past experiences
Yep.
when you were vulnerable and it wasn't met with safety on the other side. And then I think a lot of people carry so much complex trauma when it comes to dating. A lot
Yeah.
of people I work with, they've been single for years and it truly feels like they're in the trenches. They've constantly put themselves out there, and as soon as they feel connected, the person ghosts. So, rightfully so, they carry these stories. When you assume the other person's going to leave, as soon as you let your guard down, you're going to keep on projecting these old wounds onto new people.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is building self trust first. So, when you believe no matter what happens, whatever comes your way out there in dating and life, you're going to be okay no matter what. You can handle the
Mm.
loss, that pain. It's so much easier to risk and put yourself out there. And I think
Oh
that,
my.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you really kind of nailed it right on the head from the jump, because I do think that that's such a big piece of like honoring that there's like good reason why the trust is not there as much, or it feels really scary, or we have thoughts that somebody's just going to disappear. Um but also understanding that, when you know that you can survive that, when you know that you can handle it, when you know that part of the reason that issue is there in the first place is because you have maybe been ghosted in the past, or you've been hurt, or what's felt like abandonment has happened in your relationships, seeing that like you survived that then too, and that you can survive it again.
Absolutely. It's almost the way you're talking about it. It reminds me of exposure therapy. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
have this big fear something bad's going to happen. And part of the work is just exposing yourself to this situation and giving yourself those data points. That fear, it's not really going to happen. I think I talked about this actually today. Like we carry these stories with us. We're like dragging them from our past into our present to protect ourselves. But I think it's more about self protection and it actually becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. So I tell
Mm-hmm.
people try to notice when you're jumping to the worst case scenario and challenge those thoughts with evidence.
Yep, that's so true. Yeah, it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's really hard sometimes to see people that have like good reasons to be hurt, or like when I've done this in my own life where it kind of makes me want to, pull back and just really keep myself safe. It's easier to see from the outside how much that can limit us, or the thing that we fear, like being alone or never finding someone, that it actually kind of brings us closer to that reality instead of being so like protective and feeling good in the way that we want it to.
Absolutely. And for good reason, we want to protect ourselves. For some reason,
Yeah.
like we carry our pain much stronger or much more, we're willing to carry our pain than all of our triumphs and all the love that we've received. And I think it's at least helpful to try to balance it out. But I
Yeah.
think that question is valid. And a lot of the people I do work with, when they have this fear, their threat detection radar system, it's very accurate. So they can feel within one or two texts when that person is shifting or starting to back away. And I think one of the best things you can do is talk about this. Don't keep it to yourself. Where
Mm,
people go wrong is they shrink, they make themselves small to preserve attachment or their relationship. And then eventually they're going to lose that person and waste so
yeah.
much time and energy. There's this model by Rosenberg. It's about nonviolent communication.
Uh-huh.
The whole idea is talking in a way that the other person can hear you. So it starts with one, noticing the script or the story you're carrying, and then two, try to communicate in a really clear way. So, one, make an observation of the facts. What are you seeing or hearing from the other person without any judgment or evaluation? And then two, talk about how that makes you feel, identify
Mhm.
your emotion and how it's related to the situation. And then give that person a roadmap, explain how your feelings are reflective of your needs. And then four, make the request. So tell that person what you need very clearly. And then you're giving them the chance to meet you where you're at.
Yeah. I really love that you touched on the threat detection system, and that it is accurate like a lot of times, or that it's finely tuned, because I think that is a piece of the puzzle that maybe is not mentioned as much, or like I'm not always kind of talking about this or thinking about the fact that like a lot of us that are really sensitive, or maybe like more empathic or just more highly attuned, that maybe are more sensitive to this feeling of being rejected or somebody losing interest, we also typically are people that are picking up on these subtleties, and that there is some truth there. And I think people can also get themselves into trouble when it's like, oh, well, I know I have all this wounding from the past, so I should just like, I maybe don't need to worry about this. I'm just being paranoid, and aren't honoring what their system is picking up, that maybe someone is pulling back or not showing as much interest, or there's something that's going unspoken in the relationship that is really important to address.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's about, okay, my threat detection sense something is off. And most people, where they go wrong is they jump right to abandonment and they do everything they can to avoid that. And that means
Yeah.
sacrificing all their needs in the process. And instead, it's about, oh, there's something off here. Can I talk about it in a safe way? And for a lot of people, again, it's like exposure therapy. It can feel so scary and unsafe, but so important to really negotiate what you need in a relationship.
Yeah, no, it is that fine line, and remembering like in what you laid out with the nonverbal communication, which is so helpful, like as a roadmap for people, like um a way to address it so that we can kind of reality check on what actually is going on here, because sometimes while the threat detection system is accurate on that something is up, we might be more prone to going, oh, jump to this conclusion because this is what's happened in the past,
Exactly.
versus the threat detection isn't actually giving us a reason why something is up. We're making those assumptions, and we can really avoid some unnecessary pain if we address the assumptions that we're making instead of just believing, oh yeah, this is what's happening.
I think that's what's key. And our own egos might shield us from how hard it is to admit this. Our threat detection might be accurate, but our assumptions often aren't. And I think
Yeah.
it's important to check ourselves. We might be picking up on something, but we don't exactly know what's happening on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, okay. This is really helpful. So I think you about just nailed it in just a couple of minutes on, what this person was asking and hopefully adds some help. So do you have anything to add before we go to the next one?
I think it's about not doing it perfectly. Often, when people are dating, they idealize and they think I'm either not finding anyone at all if they haven't found someone they connect with, or they have this really quick connection and then they kind of over index on it and put everything into it. And I think it's about really slowing things down and living in the gray space. Just because you
Mm-hmm.
haven't met someone you connect strongly with doesn't mean you won't ever. And just because you met
Mm-hmm.
someone that you like now doesn't mean you're kind of putting all your eggs in their basket. It's about really kind of taking things slower so we're not kind of jumping the gun before we really know people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wish I could have told myself that like a couple years ago. It's a fine thing to learn, and especially when we've been hurt, it's tough to, I think sometimes that is a safety seeking strategy in itself too, of jumping the gun and getting really close to someone before you really know them, because we also feel like that might protect us from loss or disappointment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said.
Okay, let's jump to the next one. So let's see what they say. It says, "Dear Evergreen, I'm dating someone new who seems super nice and thoughtful, but I can't help thinking she's kind of boring. Is she not the one? I'm used to dating people I find exciting and who give me butterflies, but none of those relationships have worked out, so I don't know if I'm looking for the wrong thing."
Such a good question. I love this so much.
Yeah. Okay, tell me what your initial thoughts are.
So, personally resonates, I think almost all my single patients also resonates with. And the issue is that like excitement, it can often come from unpredictability, which for some reason our brains believe that can feel like love, especially if we had a very unpredictable past, our caregivers. That doesn't mean that it's healthy though. So just because someone's unpredictable, they keep you on your toes, doesn't mean that that's what you're going to want long term. I think dating has such a good PR person, like the butterflies that we gush over. I,
Uh-huh.
it's anxiety in disguise. I don't think that's a sign of compatibility. It means that they're kind of arousing something in you that's keeping you really stressed out. And I think similarly, boring, what can initially feel like boring, it actually means stable and emotionally
Yeah.
safe. And those are traits that build a very lasting foundation. I think boring
Mhm.
needs a little help or a rebrand in the PR department in our term, like in our emotional relationship to it. Because it's not
Mhm.
boring, it's stable, it's secure, it's steady. And these are foundations for a really strong relationship.
Oh, Sabrina, you are the perfect person to talk to about this because I think you're so, like, you have such a good way of articulating it, because this question in particular really jumped out to me because it bothers me a lot how people talk about relationships, especially like, in their 20s, and like really the idea through, as you said, the PR of the of love, of our love lives, of movies and all these things that represent how it should feel. It's really good at pushing that narrative, but it's pretty incorrect, as you say, of like what's actually going to help us have the relationship that we want. It's pretty misleading. And it bothers me so much personally and professionally sometimes. I mean, I've got empathy for my clients and for my friends that have these feelings, but like there is such a driving idea that like boring is bad and people run from boring. And sometimes I'm sitting there being like, "Girl, no, this is like the one for you. You don't understand. Like, she's making you feel safe. Like, that's a good thing, cuz think about all those people you had butterflies with and that excited you. How did it go? Like, how did it end up working out?" You
It's so
know? But sometimes it's the thing people don't always want to hear. I don't know if you
no,
experience that, but people don't like to hear this.
it's not what they want to hear and it's not what they want to see. We started off today talking about stories we carry with us. And a lot of what we get about love, it's based on the stories we're fed as children, right? Like all these Disney movies about love. And I think those are stories we are excited to watch. There's an arc, we're confused, we're not sure what's going to happen. And we don't totally want that story for our personal lives. So I think
Mm-hmm.
instead of chasing the spark or like the exciting story, it's very helpful to, in addition, to ask yourself if this person aligns with your values. Do they have the same long term goals as you? Rather than just focusing on the spark and how exciting it feels. I think people often forget that chemistry can grow, but shared values and they respect, that's what forms the foundation of real connection. And you should ask yourself those questions right from the beginning.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I was in my own therapy this morning, and like we were starting to talk about a topic that's come up a lot, like just kind of what you're saying, like story I have about myself, rooted in doubt and like this way that I just kind of interact with myself. And my therapist, before going any further, she was like, just take a second and like drop in and see, like, are you ready? Do you want to let that go?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is a really good question because we get to have a choice. And so, in this, person asking, like, I kind of want butterflies and this is just boring, am I looking for the wrong thing? Well, we can understand from like a attachment perspective and from more of this, like, long term, maybe finding a relationship that's really going to serve you, that, yeah, maybe that is like kind of the wrong thing, quote unquote, to focus on is the butterflies or whatever, but they're allowed to want that. People are allowed to make that choice even still. And the same way, in my therapy, I would be allowed to say, actually, I don't think I'm ready to let go of that yet. There's some part of me that's still really afraid or still wants, this excitement or kind of wants the drama of it or wants the chaos of it a bit
I love
because
that.
everybody's on their own timeline. Yeah.
Absolutely. That resonates so much with me, like not feeling ready to let go of the story or kind of what's kept me safe. And I think a lot of people feel that way too. It's about waiting until the right time, or maybe you've had enough, or you're ready for something different. I
Yeah.
think someone once said to me, like, you don't, um, dating is often about like self love. And oftentimes it's not totally conscious to us what we're picking and how that's a reflection of how we see ourselves.
Mm,
And I don't think we can push ourselves consciously. We can say we want that long term relationship, but in theory, we might want it. In practice, we're just not ready. And
yep.
sometimes it's hard to really admit to ourselves.
Yeah, and I think, there's like a trend online recently of like do it for the plot, people talking about like just doing things to create a interesting life for themselves. And it's funny, sometimes I like bristle at that because I think I'm a very opposite person. Like I'll just like kind of, once I recognize something, like say if I learned this for the first time that butterflies actually isn't like maybe the thing that is the most sustainable. As soon as I know it, then I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. I need to kind of change the way I'm approaching this. But that's just my personality. And it's not to say anything is wrong with people that have a different predisposition or, you know, I don't know. I think that there's something, though, that can be really important about being able to consciously choose it versus being unconscious about it, And if you decide that you're not ready for something, well, okay, that's fine. Keep doing what you want to do, but I personally believe that there's some freedom in consciously knowing what we're doing. And then when we are ready, or maybe something shifts and we want something different, then we kind of know what to turn to, and we don't feel so lost or like blindsided by it.
Absolutely. Look, someone can give you the magical keys to life's wisdom from a young age, and you're not going to take it. You need to
Yeah.
make your own mistakes. You have to do your own experiential learning. So I think
Yeah.
what you're saying is so accurate. It's all part of the whole story of your life. There's no shortcuts. You really have to feel it in order to choose for yourself. Is this what works for me, or do I want something different?
Yeah. Okay. So helpful. So, do anything else on this question before we go on?
I think it's about not judgment or self blame, like what you're saying. You might not just be ready now. It's about what you can learn from your experiences and how you want the future to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think pattern recognition on like, okay, wait, hold on. I keep feeling this one way at the beginning of dating someone and then it crashes and burns. maybe I want to look for something different, or when it feels new or foreign with the next person I date, instead of thinking that that's bad or it's boring, it could be, leading me to a new experience closer to what I actually am wanting.
Absolutely. We're all experimenters in the lab of our lives. So
Mm,
it's almost like as long as you can learn something, nothing is wasted or nothing is like a waste of time. You can always become
yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see what the next person has to say. These are so fun. I love this.
people.
Okay, it says, Dear Evergreen, where can I meet people who are looking for a serious relationship like me? The apps have let me down so many times, but I want a partner. Dating feels like a chore these days.
Love this question too, because I think right now dating is really, the dating apps in particular are incredibly difficult and people are
Yeah.
feeling so burnt out and demoralized.
Yeah. And I wonder if you kind of know, you being your smart, highly trained person that you are, if you have any understanding or insight for people on why it is feeling so awful right now in particular.
Yeah, the trend that I see is that most people struggle with dating or dating apps is because there's this whole mental load that goes into swiping and just the whole process online. People are feeling burnt out because their input isn't matching their output. They're spending hours and hours swiping, investing in conversations that rarely even leads to a match. And then it rarely leads to exchanging numbers. And then, like, if that, you're so lucky for it to actually materialize into a date. And then once you're on the date, like the odds of actually connecting with them are pretty low. So
Mm,
you're just really going against the numbers, which is why dating is a number game. But I think the other part about that, the mental load, is that dating, all that strife, it's hard for everyone. Every person on the apps is going through that process, but you're facing a lot of rejection or what feels like rejection. And I think that could become so heavy. Every time you
mm,
swipe yes on someone and they don't swipe you back, that could feel like there's something wrong with me, or I'm putting so much effort into this, I'm not getting what I want out of it. That
yeah.
means that I'm marked in some way.
It's like invisible, kind of hard to define rejection of like, I went on the app and I'm not getting as many matches as I thought I would get, or as many as my friend is getting. So there's all these invisible people out there, an unknown number, that are not choosing to swipe on me.
Absolutely. And from the comfort of our own couch, like we can never escape all that rejection. It follows us wherever we swipe our phone into it. I think
Yeah.
also it goes back to the idea of assumptions. Just because you're not matching with someone doesn't mean they scrutinize your profile and say you're not good enough for them, which I think is the automatic assumption people tend to make, that I'm not enough for them. Versus people are using the apps for so many different reasons, for validation, for fun, something casual. A lot of people aren't totally taking it so seriously. It's like a video game for
Yeah.
most. So it's really hard not to put your self worth into it. But I think a helpful way to look at it is to shift your mindset. Dating is not a chore at all. It's an opportunity to connect with people. And that's truly it. You really have to lower your expectations. And I suggest to a lot of people to get off the apps if you can, or diversify how you meet people. I like the idea of meeting people in spaces that are aligned with what you love. So it's about
Yeah.
investing into yourself. And oftentimes people don't even know what lights them up or what they love. And it starts with you just doing different things. Take a class, volunteer, explore new friendships. I think also quality of relationships, they start with quality conversation. So when you're putting yourself out there, be really present and really get curious about the people around you.
Yeah. That's such a good point, because I think another piece of the um, effect of phones and just social media and everything is that we are also less present when we're with people, like even if you have to go to some mandatory work conference or something. Now we don't have to just like sit and talk to the people at our table like during lunch or whatever, you can just go back into your own world and maybe miss some of those opportunities or connections, or even just that skill of what it is like and how to be super present when you're talking to someone that's right in front of you. And, I think about that even just going on a date. Like, if you have the capability to be really present or not, and evaluate, how is this going? How am I connecting with this person? Also, like, what am I feeling inside of myself? Which takes a lot of awareness and presence of mind. And I think that's a skill that isn't being nurtured as much. It's not as automatic. Um, maybe you were more forced in a way to have some more of those skills before we had so many distractions.
I totally agree. What came to mind is our social skills have totally atrophied with the advent of smartphones, but especially the pandemic. We're working from home more, and we're
Yeah.
just not used to putting ourselves out there. I love the idea when you're talking about like you're at lunch at a conference and you're looking down at your phone, or even on a date. I think the idea that really resonates with me is have high engagement in the moment. You're going to do your best when you're there, when you're at that class or when you're at the conference on the date, and have low attachment to the outcome. Don't put in your mind this date has to be my life partner or this
Mhm.
new friend has to be my forever best friend through life. It's really just about being fully present there. And I think when you take off all the pressure, it can make you more authentic and more
Mhm.
likable. It's some strange paradox.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think it's kind of what you're saying about like the maybe we have our energy and where we're directing it a little bit backwards right now because I've never thought about how much time, I luckily have not had to experience trying to date on apps, but I have heard plenty of people and it is never a good review. And I think, what you're saying, all the time being put in for a little reward, it's feeling really exhausting, but it feels like there's no other option and people get really caught up in that. But then when it's reversed and it's like you have someone new sitting in front of you or a group of people you could get to know, that feels like it would take a lot of energy to do. And, maybe we don't want to. It's a little uncomfortable. We're afraid of being awkward. So we don't put the energy in there when actually that could be the thing that yields more rewards and is actually a better use of our time and what we do have to put into it versus going home and like scrolling on the apps and feeling like this is, going nowhere.
Absolutely. You have to choose your pain in life, and it might be so uncomfortable putting yourself out there, being a beginner, embarrassing yourself, but you have to wonder what if it goes well? What if it actually works out for
Uh,
me? Instead of carrying the script of it'll just be the same thing over and over again.
you have to choose your pain in life. I like that. That feels helpful.
It's tough,
Yeah.
especially when you're kind of facing fears or doing things that are so uncomfortable for you. But I think when we go towards the things that make us uncomfortable, we often rarely regret it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. We ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. It says, Dear Evergreen, my partner is super logical and calm, and I'm the emotional one. I feel embarrassed sometimes after I open up. How can I express my feelings without feeling like I'm too much?
This is
Yeah.
such a great question. And I think it's funny because often dyads or partners, I find, are drawn to the person who might be opposite in terms of emotional expression. We'll see the stereotype is a very stable man emotionally, and then a woman who might be a little bit more highs and lows.
Yeah.
And I think I see it a lot, and because I work with couples, and I think it's so beautiful when they can meet in the middle. A reminder I like to share with people is that emotional expression, it's never too much, and it's a vital part of actually connecting with people because it's a very authentic and genuine part of you. People come with the story that you're too much, often because that's the message we got when we were kids. We were really angry or we were upset and we got pushed or siloed into a timeout from parents who were just overburdened, or they just had too much going on. And
Mm-hmm.
so we've learned to preserve attachment to the people closest to us. We have to suppress how we're feeling,
Yeah.
and it's actually the last thing that we should be doing because it's actually pushing us further away. So we
Mm.
have to learn how to communicate our emotions. The way I like to do this is to lead with clarity. So you should say, I feel X emotion because of Y. So the idea is that you want to give your partner a roadmap to support you. So remember, your emotions, they're data points to better understand you. They're not demands, they're not things that your partner should feel guilty about or punish them with.
Mm.
They're insights. So I think it's helpful to reframe your vulnerability. It's a bridge to intimacy. And also reframe your partner's calmness. It's a strength. They're not judging you, or they're not judging your emotionality. And the better able you are to validate yourself and your emotions, the less validation you're going to seek from them and the less you'll question yourself with them.
Yeah, it definitely is like a two-pronged process, like the more that we can kind of show up for ourselves. And especially if we identify with being more of the like emotional partner, or even just like on our own, if we just identify being more emotional, having more difficulty regulating that, not a problem. It's not too much. It's just a matter of learning skills and being able to show up for ourselves and regulate ourselves a little bit more. But also, yeah, what you're saying, like we can expect that from a relationship too. Understand that our partner may have their strengths, but we have our strengths. And I think that there's something really important about acknowledging the fact that like yeah, we live in a cruel world in some ways, that why can't we just find the person that's like us? We got to find the opposite. That's so true, especially when it comes to relationships. I think there's beauty in it, but sometimes it feels cruel. And I think part I don't know, maybe there are some people listening that can relate and feel that they're so diametrically opposed from their partner in that way. And I think it's more common for that logical partner to sometimes villainize or see the emotional partner as the problem. And to be on the receiving end of that is really hard. And I do want to validate that, like, I think there are situations where clear communication goes so far where people really can meet us and are willing, and that love really is such a strong foundation to make people want to look at themselves or look at the relationship and work on it. And I think sometimes people are not ready or willing to do it, especially if someone is more logical and maybe has their own avoidance of their emotions that are getting in their way of being able to show up or accept that you have your emotions as well. And, I'm never the person to say, oh, just if that happens, you got to break up with them and just move on. But I also want to acknowledge that it's tough. And it goes back to what we were saying in one of the earlier questions. People have to be ready to want to change something. I wonder what it would even be like sometimes in partnerships to ask someone a direct question like, do you want to understand, my emotional world better? Do you genuinely care about doing that? And it would be so painful to get a question or to get an answer to that that's no. But also, it's really good information for us and where we're putting our time and our energy.
I love that. It's not about like forcing ourselves onto other people, but seeing what they have capacity for. I like what you said too. It's hard for both partners to really tolerate the polarity of the other person's approach.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in dating, and it's the only other thing that comes close to this level of relationship is really with our parents, our
Yeah.
long-term romantic partners. And oftentimes how we are emotionally is a reflection of what we needed to be with our parents. So that very stable, emotionless partner often probably had a very emotional parent, and they learned they didn't have any space to be emotional. They had to be kind of stoic and play small. So that person might unintentionally be attracted to someone that mirrored their parent growing up or their mother, and then unintentionally may seek to change them. So you're attracted to this person that kind of recreates that core wound, yet it's so intolerable for you. And I think the lesson is using that repetition compulsion, your choice in a partner, as a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to polarize each other. You both can meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. And I think I did an episode, yeah, like last week's episode would be about this idea of being too much or like too difficult, or like when we try to open up to people not feeling understood by them. So there's more if people want to listen to that, but there's always a part of me that wants to say like, it's never a matter of like, oh, I'm just blanket too much for anyone. It's so much more complicated than that. And I know it can be really painful to feel that way. But I think everything, and hopefully in our answer to this, kind of gets across that that's not the blanket. That's not the end of the sentence. And it's just that you're too much or that something is wrong, with emotionality.
Absolutely. Sometimes we create or we carry these self destructive stories because it gives us a sense of control. If you believe you're too much, then you have a solution. You make yourself
Yep. Yep.
less. And that's not going to make you happy long term either.
Yep. You have such a clear way of putting things, Sabrina. I was like, wow, you really are just giving these like soundbite quotable moments. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what it is. Done.
I'm just bouncing off of you. You bring the concept so eloquently, and you're
Oh,
talking about
thank you.
such relevant things. I think it like makes a lot of sense.
Oh, thanks. Okay, well, let's see. We got one more question, so let's jump into it. It says, "Dear Evergreen, how do I know the line between compromising in a relationship versus compromising myself to make the relationship work?" This one's important.
This is important, and this is a hard one because it requires balance. And I love the quote, like, you can have everything you want, but not all at once. You're always going to
Mhm.
be left at times feeling like you're not getting really what you need. And I think at the end of the day, a great compass is that compromise, it's mutual. It's going to leave both people feeling respected and valued for the most part.
Mm,
On the other hand, if compromise feels like self betrayal to the things that are most important to you, that's crossing a boundary. So,
yeah.
like the idea of asking yourself, like, does this bring me closer to my values or is it pulling me away from them?
Yeah. That piece about self-betrayal is really interesting because I think that that's easy to fall into, um especially depending on your predisposition or maybe more like people pleasing behaviors or things where you feel that you need to give certain things up for a relationship to work. I know even just in people that grow up in families where it's like family first, family values, like you do this for the family. It can be well intentioned and for the most part okay, but can also lead to some thoughts of like, oh, I put myself kind of second or to the side, or I'm not allowed to kind of do my own thing if it breaks from that. Um, but yeah, that can lead to feeling that kind of, it's like pit in the stomach type of feeling of knowing that we're betraying our own lines, what's okay for us, or what feels like maybe giving too much in order to compromise.
Absolutely. I love how you use that too, family first, because that's often used in not the healthiest families as a way to silence the needs of all the members to put the family first. So I think it's really helpful, like the model we said, to notice, observe what's happening in you, what emotions getting aroused, and then how is that reflective of a need that's not getting met. I think it's helpful to also list things out. I'm a big writer. I like to kind of process things
Mm-hmm.
verbally and in a written form. So something that could be helpful is if you're upset, write it out. What are your values here? What's not getting met? Because once you do kind of have that checks and balances, you can see how they're not getting met and maybe
Yeah.
what you do need in order to give more. Another strategy I give to a lot of couples is to give yourself a regular check-in with your partner to make sure both people are being heard and there's a balance. Balance
Yeah.
is not magically created. You have to intentionally and regularly create this checks and balance system. So that starts with you opening up, talking about it instead of just sweeping all these resentments under the rug.
Yeah. And I'm actually really curious too what you would think. How can somebody tune into if they're maybe not compromising enough? Especially at those early phases of dating, I think there's been more of a push, especially for women, to have higher standards, which is good. I'm down for that. I think that's important. And sometimes I think it can start to uh make it almost impossible to find a match or to feel like someone can live up to those standards because there is going to be need for compromise or there are going to be things that are disappointing or not exactly what we would want. So how can you kind of feel into when maybe there's not enough compromise?
That's such a great question. And I think, unfortunately, the algorithm on social media, it's feeding us what we want to hear, not necessarily what's best for our growth. And
Yeah.
really getting us out there, it's kind of keeping us stuck on our phones. I like the idea of being empowered and kind of women are angry. They've been mistreated a lot and men in the dating world. And so the idea of higher boundaries, it protects us more, but it keeps us more siloed. We're boxed in. I
Hmm.
think when we have these negative scripts with dating, like they're just going to take advantage of me or they're just takers. They're not going to really meet me where I'm at. It's going to create this self-fulfilling prophecy because if we carry these rigid boundaries for people and make these assumptions that they're always acting out of ill intent, we're never going to really pursue relationships. All relationships have ruptures and it's about their repair. So I like the idea of giving someone the benefit of the doubt and then giving them the chance to disappoint you. You have to give people their own data points and give them the agency to show you what they really care about. So I
Yeah.
think it's about the willingness to be heard ultimately with dating.
Yeah, and also think about how much we learn from when we give people the chance to disappoint us, because with that repair that you're talking about, you learn, I would say, much more than when you're in harmony too, because then you can see, how does this person respond when either I've disappointed them or they've disappointed me? And is there still some mutual respect or understanding or effort put forth to figure it out, to come to a compromise or conclusion that feels good for both of us? Like, wow, how does this person respond in those moments?
Absolutely. And it's about, we're going to get the data no matter what. It's either going to come from us, we're going to assume what their intent is, or we're going to give them the chance to prove to us how they really feel or if they can meet our needs. And
Yeah.
it's kind of the guarantee if we feed them that narrative or if we hold on to that narrative, but we open ourselves up to so many more possibilities if we kind of take the time to see what they're going to do with that power.
Mm-hmm. So true. Okay. Anything else on this one before we go to my last little personal question for you?
I think it's just really about the willingness to communicate. And I know that's such a cliche, especially with couples and dating, but it can feel so scary when saying what we feel, being too much, might threaten the relationship. But really, it's the only way to actually get closer to people and really be
Yep.
seen.
Yep. And I think it goes all the way back to what you said at the beginning about the exposure therapy. There is a bit of life, and I think living a full life that involves some exposure to the things that we fear the most. And in my opinion, one of the things that keeps us from communicating and gets people to sit on things for so long that it's just festering under the surface is that fear of it not going well, of us not getting that response that we want, um, just something going wrong. But I really do think that when we can expose ourselves, in a sense, to that more, and also expose ourselves to the inevitable hurt and pain that will happen, the mess of communicating with people, then it, in a weird way, becomes less scary because we know that we can handle it, and we can actually see that sometimes it saves us a lot of pain in the long run because we tried to communicate something and it went so poorly, and we actually really learned that that person was not the one for us, or that the respect wasn't as strong as we thought it was.
Absolutely. It's such a more efficient and freeing way to live.
Yeah, efficient's a good way to put it. It is more efficient. Okay, so I'm really curious. This has been so helpful. I'm so excited to hear what, people think, or if there's, follow-up questions or reflections on this. I feel like there was so many interesting points that you brought up, and I'm really grateful to have this conversation. And I'm also really interested to learn what your top 3 things, your must do, must have, for living well, for living a really fulfilling life.
I love this question. And it made me also like reflect of how I do want to be living my life and like the compass I try to keep with me.
Yeah.
The number one thing is really connection and really investing in relationships. I try to do that by looking like inwards. How can I show up better for the people who support and uplift me, from
Mm,
friends or my family to my partner? And one of the ways I do that is by showing up as authentically as I can and trying to be really present in the moment. I think
mhm,
that quality is so much more important than quantity. So a few really strong, deep relationships are so much more important than the superficial ones.
mhm,
The second is curiosity, and this is something I practice almost daily, many times a day. I'm always shifting back into like curiosity with more like a learner's mindset to keep growing and trying to understand people instead of having this like black and white automatic assumption or like a fixed judgment that I might automatically cast
mhm.
onto people. Our brains are wired to have these quick heuristics or beliefs about the world and people just to make it simpler and safer, but it
Yep.
doesn't actually serve us. So I really try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really try to pause and think, ow, like that stung, that comment, but maybe there's another explanation. And
Mm,
I always try to have empathy and understanding to have the context.
yep.
I think it's really important to try to stay open, like to not kind of rule people out and not think like, oh, this person hurt me in some way. I'm going to write them out forever. So I think it's really about viewing challenges or any kind of ruptures in any relationships with people as a puzzle to solve and to push through rather than an obstacle to completely avoid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the last is just consistency. I really try to have these small daily rituals. I think they become really big over time. So it's about showing up even when I don't want to. An example is I always show up for a Pilates class I sign myself up for. And my rule is I don't have to give 100%, just being there is enough. But
Mm.
I'm always so proud of myself when I show up. And I think the rituals we have, they become the anchors that provide us and give us some sense of stability in such an unpredictable and stressful world.
Mm-hmm. What I love about your top three, and it's really interesting because I've just recently started asking guests this question, and it always makes me curious how people are going to approach it because it's like I leave it vague. You could just have said like drink enough water in the day and like get up before sunrise or something. But I love, and I feel like it's so emblematic of you and your approach to the world too, that you really listed three values. And I just think that that's so important and it makes sense. How do we live well? I think a big part of that is living in line with our values and who we want to be as people. And I just think that's really cool.
I didn't even notice that. That was such a good catch. And you're such a great therapist, too. It's,
Thanks.
it's not. It's like our values are our compass, and we're always going to kind of get lost in life. But as long as we like look down and say, here's how I reorient myself, we'll be okay. And I think it's an everyday kind of challenge to keep on doing
Yep.
that.
Yep. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to answer these questions so thoughtfully, so helpfully, based in all of your knowledge and your um, training and your study and your clinical work. And it's just like so great to get to kind of borrow and take all of that. And yeah, I just feel really grateful.
Oh my gosh, me too. No, it's co-constructed. I learned so much from you as well. And this was so lovely. Thank you for having me, Hayden.
Thanks. And I will have you all linked below too. But is there anything in particular you want people to know about you or where to find you or how to learn more from you?
The best way to find me is through my website. So drsabrinaromanoff.com.
Simple enough. Okay. Wow. That was so helpful and so informative. I'm not kidding when I say, like, and you guys probably agree, so many quotable moments. Like, she was just kind of one quote after another, really putting things so succinctly. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Share it with all your other dating friends, anybody that's out there struggling, which is a lot of us. And if you liked this, if you appreciate me having some consults on, getting some guests for you guys, then please maybe take a second to leave a 5-star review on this episode because it helps me a lot and it takes 0.2 seconds. Yeah, and as I said, everything we mentioned will be linked below. Sabrina will be linked below. And I will catch you guys next Wednesday. Thanks so much for listening.